I'm Aryeh Schwartz along with Rachel Galligan, and welcome to the Winsidr show where it's all about the W. Today we are joined by the great Lyndsey D'Arcangelo, author of Courtside, a one-on-one Q&A with many of the biggest names in the W, and a writer for The Athletic. If you like our show, please consider joining our Patreon community. For less than a cup of coffee a month, you can directly show support for the hard work we do covering the W and read the Wubble Weekly with Owen Pence. And we're actually going to be doing an exclusive Patreon podcast this coming week. And don't forget to see the amazing written content from our staff over at Winsidr.com. And speaking of amazing written content, this episode we are joined by the one, the only, the great Lyndsey D'Arcangelo. Lyndsey, how's it going?
Man, I like this intro. You guys are like making me feel real special. I like it.
Well, you are special.
You are special. You are very special.
All right, let's hop right into it. There's been a lot of talk going on this W season. Obviously, there's the ups and the downs. It's a condensed season. I think all of us are going a little stir crazy. Not only locked in our house due to coronavirus, but also locked into our house because there's 3 games a day for basically every day since the season started until the season ends. The WNBA season is in full swing, and what better topic to discuss during the full swing than the MVP race? I think it's an interesting topic this season because while in the, let's say, first 10 games, the Seattle Storm really solidified themselves as the far and ahead favorites, and the standard MVP nod goes to the best player on the best team, especially when a team is blowing them out as Seattle did. But there has been discussion of, who else is in the MVP race and why aren't these other players getting more attention? And couple that with a 2-game losing skid that we're currently in as we record today on the 25th. Breanna Stewart is still leading that race, but there's some other players that deserve and should be getting discussion about this. So I'm going to open this up and kind of list the 4 players in my mind that are in the MVP race for a variety of reasons. And then I'll kind of toss it over to you, Lyndsey, and you, Rachel, and we'll discuss if you guys think I left someone out, if there's a 5th player that should be involved. And we can kind of just debate it and pick each other's brains for why we're riding each horse to the MVP trophy. I got Breanna Stewart, I got Candace Parker, A'ja Wilson, and the late shoo-in, as some people, as the Sky fans would say, Courtney Vandersloot, the point guard. Lyndsey, what are your thoughts and reactions to these players? Who's leading in your mind? What's going on with you?
I agree with those 4. I have those same 4. Where I maybe have a little different is I got Stewie's still hanging on to that number 1 slot. But after that, I mean, the way Sloot's been playing, she's having a 51% from the field, 40% from 3, 90% from the free throw line season. She's got a plus minus of 9.6. She's averaging 13.4 points and 8.7 assists. She's literally having the best season of her career so far. And I don't know how you can have this conversation without really considering her as a threat to kind of take over that number 1 spot. I got Wilson after her. She's got great numbers too, but and then Parker below that. Again, they have great numbers, but just for me, it's Stewart and Sloot down the stretch here. What are your thoughts, Rach?
I mean, I definitely can't argue against the 4. I definitely think all 4 are going to be at the top. And the crazy thing about this is it's just going to come down to the wire. I mean, it's a complete logjam at the top. We've got, 4 teams, whether it's half a game or a game back. Now, with Seattle on that 2-game skid. And I mean, we could talk about a logjam, maybe get into that later at the show, whether, just even getting into the playoffs is going to be a crazy finish. But, we're kind of at that point of the season where we're halfway there, over halfway there. And now we can really start analyzing some of these numbers and some of these players. And in terms of the MVP race, man, this is just, it's going to come down to the wire in my mind. I agree. I think that Brianna Stewart's, if the season ended today, Stewie gets the nod. When you really step back and you really analyze Vandersloot's numbers, they're so impressive, and what she's been able to do as a facilitator and leader of the Sky team is so impressive. And Sky are clicking on all cylinders. They won 4 in a row, but same thing with the Sparks. They've won 7 in a row now. I mean, so in terms of who are the 2 hottest teams in the league right now, it's got to be those 2, and then A'ja Wilson, I mean, she's been a force. She's doing exactly what, a lot of people envisioned she would do for this Aces team in this season, especially without Liz Cambage and being that dominant presence. But I agree. I mean, it's hard for me to kind of differentiate, or even rank them, honestly. I just kind of have it Brianna Stewart, and then there's the other 3. But every single day it feels like it gets closer and closer.
For me, maybe I should have done it in the order that I had in mind, because for me it goes Stewie, Parker, Vandersloot, Wilson, and maybe this is a stupid take by me, but with the Sky taking both those games against the Aces, I have to give the nod to Vandersloot over Wilson. And also the stats that I broke down, I didn't dive deep into the analytics and the percentages like you, Lyndsey, which I appreciate that you did, because we need to have someone who's doing that. For me, it's just if you have a per game stat that's above 3, even if it's like Stewie's 3.1 assists per game or Sloot's 3.4 rebounds per game, that kind of brings into it. For A'ja Wilson, yes, she's leading all these players in points per game at 19.8 and has a very respectable 8.8 rebounds a game, but those are really her only 2 per game stats. And then you look at Candace Parker, who's surrounded by some amazing players, but they just haven't honestly showed up this season. Candace Parker's really carried the Sparks team. So for me, Parker's number 2, and Stewie, yeah, she leads it, because she's also been playing how many less minutes than all these other players, because so many of these games have been blowouts.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with you on the Parker. Putting her at number 2 at 14 points per game. Yeah, she's averaging 9.8 rebounds per game, almost a double-double. But so is Wilson there. If you look at her overall numbers, she's 14 points per game. Chelsea Gray's 12 points per game. Nneka's 12 points per game. Raquana Williams 11 points per game. The scoring's pretty spread evenly. I mean, we're talking about 2-point differential.
True.
So to say that she's kind of carrying the team, I think, is a bit of a stretch. Is she having a good season? Yeah, she's having a good season, but it's not for me. It's not on par with the other 3. Her plus minus ratio is 6.6. The other 3 are 8 and above, almost 10. So for me, it's just the impact you have on the whole team, on the whole court, and the rest of the team as a whole. The other thing I wanted to add on Stewie real quick, she's having Defensive Player of the Year numbers too.
For sure.
So that's another aspect of the conversation, that if you look at Sloot and maybe, Sloot edges out or passes her in this race down the stretch here, Stewie can also just slide right into that Defensive Player of the Year, because she's having those kind of numbers at 1.5 steals, 1.4 blocks per game.
It's interesting to me, how people decipher what is an MVP. How do you break that down, or how do you measure that, right? That's always the debate on really any MVP for any league. Last year, I feel like in ways it was pretty clear cut who that MVP was going to be.
Yeah.
This year, how does the team finish? How far do you go? How are you playing towards the end of the season? Overall impact on the court, defensive numbers. I mean, so many people tend to break this down by scoring numbers, and I definitely understand that holds a ton of weight. But overall impact and how a team is going to finish and perform in the later half of the season, I mean, this is going to be as an exciting of a finish and it's as tight of a race to an MVP I think we've seen in a minute. And that makes it really, really enjoyable, for us who are, sitting here watching 8 hours of WNBA every single night.
Yeah.
Well, also I want to bring up into this as you brought up, kind of looking at who else is on this team, not to kind of ask for the wrath of the Gamecock fans, but I think this next statement might get me drugged out, whatever the term is, out on Twitter. A'ja Wilson averaging 19.8 points a game on 30.9 minutes. Angel McCoughtry logging in 10 less minutes a game is averaging just 4 points less. Or and like you got two other players, McBride and Hamby, both closing in on 12 points per game on less minutes than A'ja also. So it, like, for me, it has to be that combination of what you're doing when you're out there. And when I say that, I think it very much so speaks to Courtney Vandersloot, because as we've seen throughout this whole season, this team, this Sky team, it looks like an elite top team in the league when Sloot is out there. When she takes those rest minutes, as every player needs, especially at her age, like, that's when the team starts to struggle. That's when this team just hasn't been able to find a footing in an on-court leadership. And I think that often goes undernoticed or doesn't get enough attention when we're talking about this MVP race. Of, you have to be a player that not only are the best on the team, but also is helping carry this team and helping make this team so important. What do you got, Rach?
I just want to make a point about great analysis, picking up on Angel McCoughtry's numbers. I'm not trying to take anything away from Angel, but if you are playing the Aces and you pay attention to what A'ja Wilson brings on a court, teams have to game plan for A'ja Wilson. The game plan, we've seen it a few times so far this season, is, hey, we got to make someone other than A'ja Wilson beat us. And again, that's another thing you've got to come into play. How are teams defending them? Whereas, you got to throw the kitchen sink at A'ja Wilson to make others step up. I forget who beat him recently. Forgive me, everybody. But
when the Sky had Azrae Stevens,
yeah, that was it. Yeah,
lock her up.
Literally said, "Hey, someone other than A'ja Wilson's going to beat us," and it worked for the Sky. But honestly, these are the types of things we need to be paying attention to. How are teams defending them? How are teams game planning? Does that make sense? Because that's an impact on the court. That just her presence, they have to throw the kitchen sink at her just to try and contain her to have a chance to win the game. That's one topic of conversation I think has to be in the discussion of MVP.
Yeah, it's a multifaceted conversation for sure. I definitely, and it also, I feel like it comes down to maybe like the personal way, like we view this too. Like maybe we view each player's impact, like overall impact. I agree that the MVP is not just about points and stats, although yeah, that definitely comes into play, but it's also about the impact they have in the court during those minutes, like Aryeh was saying. And for me, like when it comes down to that, you have clear two front runners in Stewart and Sloot for me in that regard. But yeah, I agree what you're saying on Wilson, Rach.
Moving on to, there's recently a touching tribute for Kobe Bryant done by Diana Taurasi, and honestly the whole WNBA league. But Taurasi took it a step further, wearing number 8 and Bryant on the back of her jersey. And Lyndsey, why don't you kind of break down what happened there?
Taurasi happened. I mean, it was classic DT, the kind of DT we don't see as often anymore. The kind of DT that just, takes over the game, dribbles right up the court and shoots a 3 in somebody's face. I mean, she did that numerous times. 34 points, 53% from the field, 53% from the 3-point line. It was just an amazing game and an emotional game. You could feel the energy, the emotion that she was carrying. She even nicked her knee or did something to her knee towards the end of the game, and just no way was she about to go out and sit out. She was in it for the whole thing. And yeah, it was just, for me, watching it as a DT fan, a longtime DT fan, I'll be honest. It was emotional. It was emotional for me to see that in her and know why she was doing it. And it came through her play and through the screen. And I was happy for her. I was happy that she was able to go out there and do what she wanted to do in honor of her friend, Kobe Bryant.
Yeah, it was. I have to echo that as well, Lyndsey. Definitely emotional. Definitely really fun to witness as a fan, just a lover of the game of basketball in general. Very, very fitting, for Taurasi to wear that jersey. She even spoke after the game about how, she was nervous to wear that jersey and was kind of emotional about it herself. But let's not forget just the timing of this. I mean, heading into this game, Phoenix had faced a ton of adversity. I mean, not only had you been on a losing skid, but then there's the drama with Griner, who ended up having to leave the bubble. We still, who knows if she's going to have her return. So you're losing your best, arguably your best player, and your biggest presence in the inside, and this team, faced a ton of adversity headed into this game, and so the win itself, I think, was huge, and just the manner that you saw this team really come together in the face of that adversity. And then, you had the added impact of Taurasi wearing Kobe Bryant's jersey on his birthday, and her just playing, as you said, just kind of vintage Taurasi, knocking down shots and being that cold-blooded, just killer that we've all seen for so long. It was special, and I'm really happy for Taurasi. I'm really happy for the Mercury, and just kind of being able to solidify that win in a week that was, probably very challenging for them. I don't know what the future looks like, or what this Mercury team is going to do the second half of the season. That's for another show, but definitely a special night for Taurasi, no doubt.
Well, and I do want to talk about the Griner aspect of this just a little bit. Obviously, this is a slightly different topic, and we're not going to touch it with a 50-foot pole, what personal issues and things like that means. Like, the crux of it is she's no longer in the bubble, and she's not currently on this team playing. And right now, this team is number 6 in the standings at 7-7 at 500. They've got a game or two against Connecticut coming up, who's right below them at 6-8. And they're right behind the Minnesota Lynx, who are at 9-4. I mean, losing who, I don't even know how you describe Brittany Griner. If you watch WNBA, you know the impact that she has on the game when she's dialed in. And I'm curious your guys' thoughts. What is the outlook for this a Griner-less Phoenix Mercury team? Because obviously, like, let's be real. Sorry if this wasn't fully on the show notes, but I think I mentioned it. But let's be real. Like, this is a team that, looking at the future, is built around Skylar Diggins-Smith and Brittany Griner. And when you lose that, yes, you still have Diana Taurasi, you still have Skylar, you still have Shatori and a plethora of other players, and Bria Hartley. Bria Hartley, who's been playing lights out this whole season. I mean, what do we think as in regards to what this team can do, what's realistic for them, knowing that if Brittany Griner does come back, she's going to have to quarantine for a period of time and miss out on a good chunk of games in this final stretch? Let's start with you, Lyndsey.
Yeah, I don't know where they're going to get those extra points from. She was averaging 17.7 points per game this season. She was averaging almost 2 blocks per game, so that presence in the lane. They don't have anybody else like that. Like Kia Vaughn, she showed what she's capable of in that game against the Mystics that they won recently, but I don't see her having those types of numbers every game. And I certainly don't see Diana Taurasi putting up 34 points night in, night out on this type of schedule. So for me, I'm wondering where that extra offense is going to come from. And I don't think they have the bench capability to do that, to supplement those points. And then on the defensive side, obviously it's a big hole. On the other note of this, I just want to add, like, the whole thing is strange, obviously, and personal issues could be anything. I hope everybody and her family is okay, like, best wishes and all of that. But if I was one of her teammates, I'd want to know, like, what's up, because the one criticism about Griner that I've always had is her commitment level, and just her energy game in and game out. She's never really seemed to fully give it her all, and throw every part of herself into a full season. So those are my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I agree. This is a tough one because Griner, could easily be the MVP of the league.
I picked her at the beginning of the season, man.
Yeah, it kind of is like,
Me
when
too.
when does Griner want to go?
Yeah.
And so it's an interesting. She's interesting to analyze because man, when she wants to go, she can't be stopped. But there's times where she comes in and she looks disinterested. I mean, let's just call a spade a spade. And so, yeah, like the presence that she is. I mean, just her impact, just physically being on the court changes game planning from across the board for every team. So from here on out, when teams are preparing for the Phoenix Mercury, it's now a different game plan because she is not on the court, and that's just changes everything. So, I agree. I hope everything is okay with Griner. I hope that everyone's safe and it's nothing too serious. And I really hope for a return if that's what's best for her. But at the same time, man, this is a big blow for Phoenix. I mean, I'm not saying anything that, nobody knows. It doesn't come from one person. You can't fill the holes of the shoes of Brittany Griner with one person. Now, people got to step up. You've got to be able to have Brianna Turner, Kia Vaughn, players off the bench. Now, again, hey, we keep saying this is the season of opportunity, right? So here's your chance. You got to step up and be able to give some solid minutes and do the work but it has to. It's across the board. Skylar Diggins is going to have to play better. Bria Hartley, she's played great. She's going to have to continue that. You're going to have to get more from Taurasi. It's a group effort to be able to try to fill that hole and just work in your offense. Where are you running your offense through instead of trying to get a Griner touch each possession? Now, how are we working this offense to get great shots? And Griner's presence on the interior creates open shots for everyone else. So it does. It's a huge blow just from every aspect of it. But I agree. It definitely it is concerning for a lot of reasons.
Well, and you'll note how I very much so had you guys take the reins on that topic because I've been on record for many, many years saying very similar things to what you guys both said. Like, it's all about the consistency from Griner. I mean, I don't think anybody in this league, or no, sorry, when she got drafted, I'll say this. When she got drafted, I think we would all be shocked to look this far down her career and not see one MVP nod for her, not see the dominance in, a long stretch of games from her that we all expected, and honestly not see more championship rings on her hand. And for me, the interesting aspect is more so going to be how this team kind of adjusts their game planning. And a player who we didn't really touch on yet is Alana Smith. I mean, we're going to have to see a lot better play, a lot more play from her. And Sophie Cunningham, she's going to be needing to hit a lot more shots because not only do you need to take up the big interior on offense and defense, you just need to, like you were talking about, Lyndsey, fill those points that are just all of a sudden evaporating into air because we're not going to be seeing that from Kia Vaughn. Like, let's just be real. She's been in this league long enough. We have the scouting report on her. We know what she's capable of and what she's not capable of. And honestly, there's not many players in this league besides like Sylvia Fowles, and I'm trying to think of another one, maybe Natasha Howard when she was on last year, who can fully, fill in that dominance that Brittany Griner has when she's on. So it's going to be an interesting one. I mean, I don't want to predict that the Phoenix Mercury are going to lose out on a playoff spot because of this, because I think we all are pretty clear cut and in unison saying we want to see playoff Diana Taurasi. We want to see Skylar Diggins Smith back in the playoffs. But it's not going to be easy for this team to string together enough wins to make the playoffs. Like I said, they're ranked 6th right now. They're half a game or a full game above Connecticut. And Connecticut is like in the opposite swing direction because now they have their full roster. Now they have a better flow of things. It's going to be an interesting one. And a reminder, we have a daily show called Winsidr Daily with Ben Dull where he breaks down all of the games that happened that day. It's great. For me personally, I've missed a few games due to moving or other family and personal commitments, and being able to listen and get inside analysis of what happened in those games and a breakdown, I cannot promote it enough. And don't forget Winsidr.com and the Winsidr Network, where we have a collection of WNBA podcasts. Hit subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Moving on to surprises this season, key wins or losses. obviously, I think it's pretty simple to say the biggest one on at least my list had to be the Fever beating Seattle. I think even with Sue Bird not playing in that game, there would not be many thoughts in my mind of the Indiana Fever pulling this off. But Lyndsey, what was kind of your reaction to that? And then do you have any other games that kind of surprised you this season?
I think, I mean, it's like any team that wins long stretches. Eventually, in basketball, they're going to lose a game, more often than not. And so I think it was coming. And I just think, the the Fever they played well. They played very well. They played the best I think they've played all season in that game, and they've been a puzzle for me this year. I feel like they have good pieces in place. They have a new coach. I kind of expected more from them this season. But to see them beat Seattle, I mean, like I said, it was bound to happen sooner or later. Without Sue Bird, it just was one of those games for Seattle. But then they go and lose to the Aces in the way that they did. So I don't know. Maybe the endurance factor's catching up with them with the shortened season. But yeah, I was definitely surprised to see them to see Seattle go down to the Fever. For me, this season overall, Minnesota has been the surprise for me, the Lynx.
Yes.
I wasn't sure what to make of this roster. Obviously Sylvia Fowles is Sylvia Fowles, but they had so many new pieces. The way Cheryl Reeve gets her team chemistry to just explode and gets her team to bond and in the way they vibe off each other on the court so quickly it's just so impressive to me. And what she's been able to do this season with all those new pieces that she has and the new draft picks that she brought in, they're fifth overall, 9-4, still very much in a conversation with those top five teams. I don't know about you guys, but I've just been really surprised. And maybe I'm the one who didn't give this team enough of a look before the season started. But yeah, that's where I'm at with that.
No, I agree with you. I mean, I'm not trying to take anything away from them. They've just played really well, and I think that there's been a pretty, defined role of shots and where's the ball going to go. I mean, and they're winning games without Sylvia Fowles too.
Right.
I mean, that's the part where you're kind of
a huge factor.
Yeah. So I think you've had some players who really stepped up. You have to tip your hat to the job that Crystal Dangerfield has done and is how dynamic she's been able to be as a rookie, and the leader that she's been on the court. Afisa Collier's, continued to elevate her game as she continues to get comfortable in the league. But it's just a team that they're learning as they go. Has it been perfect? Has it been the most beautiful basketball? No, but they're well coached, and I think they've done a pretty good job of, like you said, that team chemistry. It really shows on the court, and that's how they're winning games. Aryeh, I know you probably have a lot to say on this, so I won't hold it any longer. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, look, let's be real. I'm completely on board with both of everything both of you guys said. Because going into this season, I didn't doubt this team would make the playoffs. I think it's a foolish take to not think having, I'll just say it, the greatest coach in WNBA history, Cheryl Reeve, on your roster. You're going to make the playoffs as long as you have two All-Stars and a third All-Star who's coming back off of pregnancy or giving birth. So for me, I think going into the season, I was like, okay, the Lynx are going to make the playoffs, but higher than a 7-8 seed, I would be a little bit eyebrow raised, because when you look at the stats of last year, and I was honestly shocked when I did this. I even had to hit up Rachel, and I think I hit up Ben Dole and a couple other people. I was like, am I reading these stats right, or is something off on the website? Because the Lynx had the second best defense last year, and I did not realize that. But looking at this team, all the offseason moves, for the most part, were bringing in offensive firepower. And I think it's kind of the old scale of, okay, well, if you're bringing in so much offensive firepower, how's that going to affect the defensive side of the ball? How's it going to balance out? How's it going to, continue that continuity of defense? And Reeve has figured out a way to do it. I think I heard it was either in an article or in her podcast around one of the games from one of the announcers. Reeve openly said that her training camp was all about defense. She knew that they had offensive tools, and that's why they brought them in. They didn't need to necessarily work on the offense. The offense would come the more they got to know each other and the better flow, which I think says a lot about what Reeves' forward planning was. Because if you talk about a lot of these other coaches, the things that they were focused on was the offense. How are we going to get the ball in the hoop? What are we running offensively? What are the play calls? And so for me, I do think, even with the way that the Lynx have been playing, they've been flying kind of under the radar, and there is going to be a come down to reality moment similar to what we saw from the Mystics. But I think kind of the even keelness of the Lynx is we're not going to see an 8-game losing streak like we did from the Mystics. We're going to see them not pull off. Like, I don't know how many of their games have been come behind wins late in the fourth. I mean, there's been multiple games where they've been down 15, 18, whatever it is, and still pull off a win. Obviously, this last game, they lose to Dallas, heartbreaking fashion. We didn't see that final push. And Rachel and I were texting during that game of kind of, this is that moment of them coming back to reality. I think realistically, they're kind of right where we expect them. I do not see any team below them, Connecticut, Indiana, Phoenix, Dallas, or Washington, leapfrogging them to the number 5 spot. So I think, the Lynx are looking in a position where if they continue this through, they're looking at a top 5, top 4 seed even possibly if they, outkick the coverage or whatever the phrase is. So for me, it's like, wow, this is what's actually happening. And I think a lot of that goes on the back of Crystal Dangerfield. In my book, she's the Roy. I know Julie Aleman is definitely up there in discussion. I know a lot of people are going to hype up Kennedy Carter. For me, Kennedy Carter missed so much time. And while this team, this Atlanta team has been playing well when she's out there and she's putting up ridiculous numbers, for me, I'm much more in the camp of like, you need to excel the team. The team needs to be doing great with you. And the Atlanta Dream sitting at 3-11. I'm blanking on what their record was while Kennedy was still playing before she missed. But I'm actually curious, Lyndsey, not to get into a whole discussion about this before we look at the important games looking forward, but where's your mind sitting when we talk about Rookie of the Year?
My mind was on Kennedy Carter, to be honest with you. And I had a little inside info where I thought I was under the impression she was going to return this past weekend. And so I'm thinking, she was just going to have these last 2 weeks to really just get back into what she was doing before she went out with the injury. But she hasn't returned. So I'm not really sure what her timetable is. And you're right that unfortunately affects the outcome of the race. I'm on the Crystal Dangerfield boat. I have been for the last week or so, just kind of keeping my eye on other rookies, because after Sabrina Ionescu went out and then Kennedy went out, it was kind of like, okay, well, what else is going on? And then Satu Spali went out with an injury. It's very unfortunate, side note, that this is happening, because there were so many dynamic rookies that just had their seasons cut short in that way. But shortened season is what it is. So yeah, I'm on the Dangerfield bandwagon. I think it's hers to lose if Kennedy's not coming back anytime soon.
Rachel, what do you think?
Can I just say ditto? No, I mean,
a little bit of a cop out.
No, I mean, I just, for the sake of not being repetitive, and Crystal Dangerfield's really blown me away. It's unfortunate that we've had these injuries. It's really, disheartening, but I'm excited for Kennedy Carter to come back. I in my mind, I guess for whatever reason, I'm anticipating that it's going to be this week, and I know we're getting ready to segue into kind of just the big games this week. And for me, that's the one I think I'm really excited about, is this Atlanta Dream roster, with the return of Carter potentially, and how can they face up with Washington and some of these teams at the bottom who are vying for that 8 position. It's going to be a rat race, just like it's going to be a rat race at the top. This thing is a logjam in a lot of different places. So, I think Carter's been really impressive. I think speak for everyone when we hope she gets back out there sooner rather than later. But I agree with you. It's Dangerfield's right now.
And just to update on my lack of knowing of the stats before, the Atlanta Dream have played 14 games. Kennedy Carter has been in 8 of those.
Mm.
So I think, honestly, like, yeah, she's putting up ridiculous numbers, and we all knew that she was going to do that coming into the season. But for me, and maybe Rookie of the Year is not the award that you need this aspect of it. But for me, very much so, when I look at Rookie of the Year, it's like, do you make your team around you better? And yes, Kennedy Carter makes her team around her better. But, like, even better, they're not winning a ton of games. But moving forward, not to beat a dead horse, what are key games this week looking forward? I've got a few games kind of chalked up as important for a variety of reasons. I'll run through them, and then I'll flip it over to you, Lyndsey. And then, Rachel, you can kind of chime in if you got any other ones you want to add in. The Wings Aces, mostly just because the Wings are currently in the 9 spot, and the Aces are trying to leapfrog to number 1, sitting at the number 2 spot. So, both teams have a lot to fight for, especially with Seattle Storm dripping down a little bit. Vegas is really licking their chops at that possibility of a number 1 spot. Then the Lynx Sparks. Do I need to give a reason why this is an important key game of the week? I mean, I don't care who's on the roster. As long as it's Lynx, as long as it's Sparks, I'm tuning in. It's going to be good basketball. Sun Mercury, we've talked about it a lot this episode, at least I have, about how those two teams are sitting at 6 and 7. Mercury are missing Brittany Griner. We're looking at a situation where, this is a playoff spot. We're talking top 8 playoff spot. And then we got Aces Storm for obvious reasons, as I just spoke to. And then the Storm Sky. The Sky are sitting at the 4th spot. And we've seen them take on the Aces and handle them in both games. I'm curious to see how this team can handle the Seattle Storm in their next game against them. Lyndsey, what are the key games for you?
So I picked 3 key games that I'm most interested in seeing, and you've already mentioned them. But the Phoenix Connecticut game coming up. I mean, you got the Mercury sitting there at 7 and 7. The Connecticut Sun have just been on this upward trajectory after starting off the season not so great. They're at 6 and 8. So I feel like this is a key game to either help Phoenix, keep that confidence going forward after their last game over the Mystics, and maybe figuring out the way they can scheme or whatnot without Brittany Griner on the court. So that's why I feel like it's important for them. And then for the Sun, them to just keep the momentum going, and if they can get even with Phoenix and just keep it moving. Who knows what they could do in the next couple of weeks towards the end of the season here as they continue to play better. And then the ones you mentioned for the same reason, Storm Aces. Let's see if the Storm can come back and punch the Aces in the mouth now. And I like the back and forth between these two top teams. And then Storm Sky is just another good game between two teams who are neck and neck pretty much. I mean, you look at the top 4 teams, and they're only separated, the 1 and 4 spots only separated by a game. So it's just it's so close, and I feel like anytime those 4 teams play each other, it's worth watching.
I just want to add one. My big game is the big rematch, the huge rematch of the Indiana Fever and Seattle Storm going on today. I do think that it's funny, how quickly you can play some teams back to back. But Seattle's on a 2-game skid, and I'm obviously being playful here, but how Seattle responds, to a couple losses. I think I'm very curious to see how they respond, and I think a couple days off and working on some things with yourself is going to tell us a lot about this Storm team and how they respond. I mean, and especially coming off a game where the Fever did beat them, so that'll be an interesting one, just for the sake of seeing how Seattle responds from 2 losses.
And you know what? A tip of the cap to Marion Stanley, who had the best presser I've seen all season long. We could get into a whole episode on that, but you know what? I love seeing a fired up coach. I love seeing a coach who's going to defend their players, who's going to say some things that maybe isn't the most popular to the talking heads around the W. But you know what? The job of the coach is not to appease the media. The job of the coach is to be there for her team and to bring their team to championship caliber. And if this coach thinks that what she did helps her team get better and will motivate her team in any way, shape, or form, then props to her. That's what she's supposed to do. I just love it. It's great content. Lyndsey, thank you so much for joining the show. Any final thoughts before we log off? Any secrets? Any, as I like to call them, Rach bombs you want to drop before we head off for the day?
No, Rachel's got that game cornered, man. I'm not the bomb dropping type. I'm kind of just let things come out and as they do, or but yeah, no, I'm just teasing. My one thought, we did talk about Rookie of the Year, and real quickly, I feel like Rookie of the Year and MVP are two different awards that you have to look at. Like MVP for me is like, yes, stats involved, but also, as we said, uplifting the team, your impact on the whole team, and making your team better. Rookie of the Year for me is strictly about what a rookie can come in and do more individually on the court, and transferring those skills they had in college to the next level, and how they can compete and compare with vets. And so I tend to look more at statistical output and points rather than the effect they have on a team as a whole. Because you could have a Rookie of the Year who's on a really, really horrible team. We had Aryeh last season, was in the MVP conversation, especially towards the end. And Dallas wasn't that good of a team, but it was her output that was night in and out that made her a part of that conversation. So,
well, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to ask you, while I completely respect and agree with your take on that. Obviously, I've expressed I'm a little bit like torn in two different directions on this. I should probably solidify my opinion on this. But speaking of Aryeh and Roy, what was your thought? Sorry, I didn't prep you on this. Who was your vote? Or I don't know if you had a vote, you don't need to announce that. But like last year, were you on Team Fee or Team Aryeh?
last year I did not have a vote. This year I'm proud to say that I do. I finally made it. I was offered the opportunity. Yay!
Well deserved.
Thank you very much. I was all about Fee, only because of her consistency throughout the season. For me, had Aryeh really just they come off from the jump, with her putting up those numbers, it would have been more neck and neck. But for me, it was Nafisa came in from the get go and was just made an impact on that team, and was just playing, at the pro level, and she didn't look like a rookie to me, which is kind of what it comes down to for me. So, what about you, Rach?
Can I plead the fifth?
It's the most Rachel answer.
No, I mean,
or did you have McCowan?
It's so hard. It really is. I definitely am happy for Fee. I think she does it. Both players deserve it, and I'm not trying to cop out. But man, it's really hard to look at what Aryeh did as a rookie, and what she was able to do. Granted, the team was not very good, but those numbers were so impressive. They really, really were. I mean, it's just dominant numbers from a rookie that you just do not see often. So you had two rookies that were doing different things with two different types of teams with varying success. So it just, man, that was a very difficult debate for sure. I still don't know how I feel. I feel like I go back and forth, honestly.
Well, either way, there's no wrong answer, right? I mean, they both on different levels deserved it, and Nafisa just happened to win out this time. So
yeah, it just depends on how you break it down in your mind, or how do you determine how that should be defined. That one was wild. That's a wild one for sure.
And like immediately caused a rivalry between the two franchises. And we've probably done a great job of not picking either side in this rivalry. So what a great way to end the episode. As I always say, for less than a cup of coffee a month, you can directly show support for the hard work we do covering the W. Thank you so much for joining us, Lyndsey. As always, it's a pleasure to speak to you, pick your brain on anything W, and can't wait to read the next courtside.
Yeah, I got some things in the works. Still working some stuff out, but I'm having a lot of fun with it. And this Friday, I'll be talking to the great one of the greatest point guards of all time. Some people say she is the greatest point guard of all time. Tisha Penicheiro. That's going to drop on Friday.
Awesome. Well, can't wait to read it. Everyone check it out and subscribe. We'll talk to you guys later.